Shabbat Shalom. So this week's Torah portion is actually a double Torah portion of Chukat and Balak, but I want to focus on a piece that happens in Parshat Chukat, really a very, very central moment within the Torah. But before I do that, I just want to share with you a little story that helped me kind of think about this Parsha in a different way. And this happened to me a few days ago when I was traveling. And I had gone through like a whole day of traveling, not to get from very far to very far, just like a stopover, which included many different challenges that the airline allowed us to have throughout the journey. So our luggage was too large because they changed the weight limit, and the flight was delayed, and then there was a problem getting on the plane. The machine broke, so everyone had to like write their name down, like just one thing after another. And finally, after a whole connection issue, like we're on the second flight, and like they had to reorganize the whole plane because the weight wasn't spread out in the right way. Anyway, so originally I was sitting next to this man, and then they moved him so that they could distribute the weight, so he was in the row behind me. And it was a lot for everybody to go through. And then during the flight, at some point, he was really, really thirsty. He was like pushing his button to get some water, and the flight attendant got frustrated with him, and then they tried to charge him for the water, and that made him very frustrated. And so he had this like disgruntled relationship with the flight attendants. At the same time, throughout the flight, I was sitting in front of him, and at one point I had a headache, and I was like rubbing my head, and I put my hat over my face because the light was bothering me. And he like looked through the seat and was like, "Oh, miss, are you okay?" and was really kind to me. And then at the end of the flight, when the flight attendant came by to tell everybody to put their luggage under the seat, he lost it. And he cursed at the flight attendant, and the flight attendant called the police. And when we landed, they said he was going to get arrested. And he was like waiting to get arrested, and he said to me like, "I was really nice to you, wasn't I? Like, I'm not a bad guy, right? You know I'm not a bad guy." I don't really know what to do, but I was like, yeah. And he said that to the other people around him who he had also been nice to. And I was just so struck by this experience of here he was, he was being this nice guy, but then he like blew up at the flight attendant, and like, what do we make of that? And we all have those experiences where we, in essence are good people, and then something happens and we just lose it and we explode and we say things that we wouldn't say ordinarily. So that really made me think of a moment in this week's Parsha where the Parsha, this incident in chapter 20, starts with Miriam dying. And then the verse right after Miriam's death, it says there's no water and the people are thirsty, and they get up and they go over to Moshe and Aaron and they complain. And the way that they speak is very extreme, and it seems possibly very harsh. And then Moshe and Aaron go to God, they fall on their faces, and then when they speak to the people, in verse 10, chapter 20, verse 10, Moshe says a very important phrase, and I'll read it to you. He says, Shimuna Hamorim, listen up, you rebels. And the commentaries talk a lot about this phrase, and they say, this was harsh, this was too much. Why did Moshe say to them, you rebels? Why didn't he just say to them, listen, here's how the water will come and everything will be okay? And there's a lot to think about this comment. Like, is this leadership? And is it okay that a leader got mad? And is there room for that? Or do leaders have to be above this and they can't show their emotions? Even if the people they're leading are upsetting them, they have to still speak in a way that is respectful at all times. So that's one part of this to think about. But I think the part that really strikes me is what is going on for Moshe, that he comes to say this to them, that he speaks to them with this harsh tone. And I wonder if it really goes back to the beginning of this chapter where Moshe's sister dies and he's in mourning. And there's no time for him to mourn, because the Midrash, the Yalkut Shimoni, says that as he's sitting to mourn, the people come and they're like, we're gonna die, we have no water, you can't sit here and mourn, you need to get up and help us. And so he had no space to deal with his grief, and he's carrying this grief with him. And then he says something, and it seems really off, but it's not really a reflection of who he is as a person. Perhaps it's his grief, his unprocessed grief, speaking when he says, listen, you Morim. And Rabbi Dina Weiss writes something beautiful about this. She says, if you look at the word Morim, it's Mem Vav Resh Yud Mem Sofit. If you take out the Vav and instead just make it a dot above the mem to make it O, so Mo. It's Mem, Resh, Yud, Mem, Miriam. So what was Moshe doing when he was speaking harshly? He was pining for Miriam. He was suffering and grieving the loss of Miriam. And that's why he spoke that way. And so what I'm really taking from this is this idea that sometimes we have moments where we explode, or where we see other people speaking in a way that we're surprised by or we're off-put by. And I wonder in those moments, like, what's actually going on underneath the surface? Like, the words are up here, but then the subtext of what they're really feeling, what's pushing those words to come out, might be something totally different. It might not be about the people that are receiving the words. It might be about something else. It might be about pain and suffering that they have no place to deal with in a healthy way. Or maybe they have, but they need more time. Or maybe they're just exhausted and carrying so much. And so words come out in a way that is harsher than they intend. And I'll just tell you the end of the story. So after the man got arrested, I was like really wondering, like, should I go try to find the police and tell them that he was nice to me on the plane? Like, do I have a responsibility here? Is there something I can do for him? Like, maybe I shouldn't say anything and stay out of it. I was like not sure what to do as I was walking to get my bags. And then when we were waiting at baggage, he came with the police officers. They were joking around with him. He was having a great time, and he was like very excited to see everybody and say, hey everybody, I'm getting my bags, I'm gonna be okay. And he came over to me and said, I'm gonna be okay, I'm getting my bags, which of course made me feel a little bit better. But I think like his reaction and the reactions that so many of us have, and of course this moment of utter pain for Moshe, the way that we speak might change based on how we're feeling. And so when we hear people speak in that way, maybe we can think about what is really going on for them. And also maybe we can make space for ourselves to sit with the things that we're going through, and to allow ourselves time when we have something that we're grieving, when we have something that we need to grapple with, and we need a minute to breathe, so that we can have fewer of these Shimuna Hamorim, listen up you rebels type of moments. Shabbat Shalom.